Good morning. I'm happy to introduce to you the final panel of this morning's session. I know the last panels have been very moving and very touching, and I have no doubt that this final panel will continue in that same vein. My name is Christian Evans. I'm the Executive Director of In Defense of Christians. We are a Washington, D.C.-based international advocacy organization dedicated to the protection and preservation of Christians and Christianity in the Middle East. Over the last year, we have worked very hard in conjunction with a lot of other organizations, many of whom are represented here today, to push the United States government to recognize the treatment of Christians and Yazidis and other religious minorities under ISIS as genocide. And we are committed to continue doing so in the United Nations and on the international platform. So on behalf of myself and particularly on behalf of the Board of In Defense of Christians, it's an honor to introduce to you today's panel. Christian and Yazidi women and girls, sexual victims of crimes against humanity. Our first speaker is Samia Sliman. She is a 15-year-old teenage girl from Hardan, a small village north of Mount Sinjar. Samia was captured by ISIS on August 3rd with all of her family when ISIS took over the area. She was in captivity for 6 months and later resettled to Germany. She's going to share with us today some of her experiences and the experiences of her community. So Samia, I give you the floor. And
Today I'm thankful that all of you are here to hear my story and to hear about the genocide that happened to the Yazidis. My name is Samia Sliman. My age is 15. I'm 15 years old. On August 3rd, 2014, ISIS attacked our village. They took me and my family. They took us captive. My dad, my uncle, and my grandfather are still in captivity. At the time, they took all the men and they handcuffed them. They separated them from the group of women and girls. Women, girls, and young kids took us all to their headquarters in Tal Afar. They confiscated all of our belongings at the time. I was in captivity for 6 months and 12 days in the hands of Islamic State. They raped and violated the girls that were, myself and the girls that were with me in captivity. There were thousands of Yazidi girls in captivity in this headquarters. Then they separated us to different groups. ISIS forced us from our areas. They forced us to convert to Islam. They separated us kids from from our mothers, from our parents. During those 6 months and 12 days in captivity, I've seen horrible things. They did horrible things to me and to other girls with me and to the other children with us. They raped as young as 8 and 7 years old girls. Our mothers, because they were old, they killed them. Because they didn't like them, because they were older, they just took the younger girls. They killed thousands of Yazidi men. They just kept the girls as sex slaves. Today I'm here to ask the international community and to tell my story, to ask the international community and the other countries to help us, to help the Yazidi community and other minorities in Iraq and in the Middle East, because these minorities will extinct. ISIS will eradicate these minorities. We do not have the resources and the forces to defend ourselves like other bigger groups. We ask the international community to protect us and Christians and other minorities in the area. If this continues, there will be no Yazidis, no Christians in that region because they are suffering. They've been suffering for years, especially those in the camps right now. They don't have the proper and services they need. I hope that the international community and especially the United Nations will recognize this genocide against the Yazidis and other minorities. The situation that these minorities are in is difficult at the moment. It's been years, and when I was in captivity at the time I was 13 years old. They not only raped me but other girls with me. I'm not the only girl that suffered under ISIS like this. There were many other girls that suffered under ISIS. We hope that the international community and all the Western countries will help the Yazidis and Christians and open their borders for them. If they cannot protect them in that region and provide protection for them, they will open the borders and welcome these minorities in the Western world. We see that our people don't have our people don't have the force and the ability to defend their people because we are treated as second-class citizens in that country. The Yazidis there are still young Yazidi boys training them in ISIS camps to make them future jihadis to fight with ISIS and brainwashing them. At the time when we were in captivity, they separated all the girls and they sold them to each other. They sold Yazidi girls to each other. They give Yazidi girls to each other as gifts, simply as gifts, and sold them to each other with hundreds of dollars. Why these innocent kids and these innocent people are suffering this much in that region? Why don't we see any action being taken, even though it's been over a year and a half now? We've seen horrible things happen to us minorities, especially Yazidis and Christians in that region, and we don't see that the international community taking concrete actions against the Islamic State. As I said, I hope and I wish that the United Nations will help the Yazidis and others because they need the help right now. This is a difficult time for them. There are thousands of Yazidis emigrating because they simply cannot live there because they don't find they feel hopeless living in that country without protection. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Samia, thank you. Thank you very much, Samia. Thank you for sharing with us your own suffering and the suffering of your community, and opening our eyes even more deeply to what you and what others have endured, and what the international community needs to do to protect you. So thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Elisa Van Uden Forgy, who is Associate Professor of Holocaust Studies at Stockton University, Director of the Master's Program at in Holocaust and Genocide Studies, and she's also the Vice President of the International Association of Genocide Scholars, and she has done specific work in the area of the use of sexual violence as a weapon of genocide. So I give you the floor, Doctor.
Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you, Kirsten. I would like to express my sincerest thanks to the Holy See, to Citizen Go, to In Defense of Christians, and to all the organizers of this conference for bringing us together around this very important subject. It is a great honor to be here and to be able to testify about what I have observed in Iraq. I was in Iraq for 10 days in January 2016 with two other genocide scholars, Irene Massimino and Shell Anderson. We were there to witness ISIS's crimes by visiting refugee camps, mass graves, destroyed and emptied towns and cities, and meeting with religious and community leaders from religious minority groups. While we were there, we were overwhelmed by the trauma and the suffering that has been inflicted on the refugee communities, but we were also overwhelmed by the kindness, the generosity, the hope, the courage, the dignity, and the resolve of the Iraqi people, especially the minority religious communities in refugee camps throughout the country. In speaking with refugees from Christian, Shabak, Shia, and Yazidi refugee communities, what became quickly clear to me is that ISIS is committing an intense form of genocide against all peoples it considers to be unwanted religious and ethnic minorities in the region. ISIS uses many techniques to commit genocide, so genocide is expressed differently depending on ISIS's understanding of the group that it is targeting. For example, ISIS targets the Yazidi with one of the oldest and most well-defined patterns of genocide, the direct killing of men and older boys combined with the mass rape, enslavement, and expulsion of women, girls, and younger boys. A similarly murderous pattern has been directed against members of the Shabak Shia group, whom ISIS considers to be apostates. Christians have been terrorized, abused, forcibly displaced, and have had all their belongings taken from them, including necessary medicines, the clothes off their backs, baby supplies, and sometimes even their shoes. They have also been kidnapped, raped, and murdered. Sexualized violence against women and girls is an integral part of this genocidal process, as it is in almost all genocides. We know that over 3,000 Yazidi women and girls were captured by ISIS when it overran Sinjar in August 2014. Of those, according to numbers kept by the Yazidi community as of December 30th, 2015, 1,804 are still in ISIS captivity. Captive women and girls are subjected to horrific physical and psychological tortures, and many have been killed or have committed suicide. There are reports of ISIS raping very young girls in addition to adolescents and women. A similar fate, women considered to be too old to become sex slaves have been massacred. A similar fate has befallen the Shabak Shia women and girls, and there are, of course, many cases of Christian women being forced into captivity as well, in addition to the abduction of Christian children. The sexualized violence committed by ISIS is part of a much wider pattern of reproductive violence that is evidence of genocide. Such reproductive violence, which has both a cultural and a biological dimension, is a well-known and efficient genocidal tactic, since the harm done is so deep and extends broadly to the family and the community. The point of genocidal reproductive violence involves destroying a group's ability to perpetuate itself as a strong historical community in the future, and hence it involves the widespread life force atrocities that target the deep bonds and responsibilities human beings feel for one another, as well as the symbols of those bonds. Life force atrocities have been committed against families and communities in Iraq in characteristically cruel and alarming ways. Before being taken captive, many women and children have been forced to watch as male family members are separated from them and killed, including young boys. As we know, ISIS has murdered outright over 3,000 Yazidi men and boys and has captured at least 2,000 more. Families are forcibly separated and young children have been kidnapped to be raised to become ISIS fighters or ISIS wives. These children are terribly mistreated and terrorized and are often forced to commit atrocities. Women have been raped in front of their children. Children have been forced to watch their mothers murdered. Women and children in captivity have been brutally separated from one another. There are reports of ISIS forcing captive women and girls to have abortions. Victims from the minority populations are mocked and humiliated routinely, often in public. ISIS forces some captives, especially young girls, to call their families in refugee camps and report to their families the abuses they are suffering. Before being displaced, many communities have been imprisoned in their homes, starved, plundered, and terrorized on a daily basis. We heard reports of many Christian families who paid the jizya tax and still had everything taken away from them. Some were murdered. Christians who were forced to convert were often not spared displacement, plunder, and even murder. Some who refused were killed. After being starved in their homes, elderly residents of the ancient Christian town of Karakosh, for example, were deprived of all of their belongings, bused to a remote region, and forced to walk alone to the Kurdistan regional government. One mother of 5 had her little 3-year-old girl, Christina, ripped from her arms by an ISIS soldier before the bus left. One elderly and frail woman had to drag her husband most of the way after he harmed his foot and began to lose consciousness. Refugees in Erbil report being called on their cell phones by ISIS soldiers and mocked, humiliated, and terrorized. Alongside atrocities committed against individuals as members of groups, we have the destruction of religious institutions and other symbols of cultural heritage. One estimate I heard recently from a Yazidi leader is that ISIS has destroyed 70% of Yazidi shrines. An assistant to the Syrian Catholic Archbishop in Erbil spoke to us about the Al-Tahera Church near his home of Karakosh, which dates back to the 6th century and up until at least January 2016 had only been partially destroyed. "I am a son of the land. My name is written on every stone," he said, referencing the deep ties his family has to that place. "If it is destroyed by ISIS," he continued, "I will leave Iraq." This dense network of terror and degradation, this combination of mass murder, sexualized violence, sexual enslavement, starvation, forced displacement, humiliation, plunder, the desecration of cultural symbols, and the kidnapping of children has all the hallmarks of genocide. Genocide is a complex process that aims to destroy not simply the bodies of group members, but also their identity, their hearts, and their souls. In taking aim at the deeper bond of love and responsibility that tie communities together, as well as the cultural representations of these bonds, ISIS is attempting to eradicate religious and ethnic minorities, not only from Iraq, but also from the face of the earth. ISIS seems to operate in the knowledge that these groups are very small and will have terrible difficulties sustaining their culture in refugee camps or as a diaspora scattered across the globe. In the knowledge of this terrible crime and tragedy, it behooves all of us to work toward the return of refugees to their ancient homes, the rebuilding of what has been lost, and the guarantee of their security. As one Yazidi religious leader said to me, "The world is like a flower where each petal is a people. Each petal has its own beautiful color. Do not let the color of the Yazidi people fade from this earth." The same can be said of the color of the Iraqi Christians, the Shabak, the Turkmen, as well as all other religious minorities in the region and in the world who are threatened with dissolution. Let us not let their colors fade from this earth. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Fanyudin Forji, very much for your words and for helping us to understand the sexual violence in the general context of culture, and in this particular context of ISIS, really is an instrument of genocide to destroy not only the lives of individuals and their dignity, but to destroy entire communities through psychological and physical abuse, through the destruction of the family, of healthy social bonds, and ethnic identity and culture. So thank you very much. Finally, I would like to offer the floor to our final panelist of the day, Ms. Jacqueline Isaac. Jacqueline is the Vice President of Roads of Success, which is a humanitarian NGO. She is based in Los Angeles, but travels the world doing advocacy, and just recently came back from the UK, in which she was able to participate in a very meaningful way in helping to move the resolution or the recognition of genocide in the Lord of Commons. So I give you the floor, Jacqueline. Thank you.
I would first like to thank the Holy See for sponsoring such an event. Thank you to Citizens Go, and thank you to In Defense of Christians, because this is a matter of life or of death. I want to tell Mr. and Mrs. Mueller, thank you for speaking about the courage of their brave daughter today. Before I went to Iraq, I had heard the news that Kayla had been murdered. Fox News came to meet with me, and they asked, "You're an American like her. Aren't you afraid that this can happen to you if you go?" But I thought of Kayla, and I thought of her bravery, and I thought of what she stands for. And I was able to answer, no, I am not afraid, because girls like Kayla are a symbol of what each and every one of us should be doing. I stand here today, not as a lawyer, but as a fellow human being. I stand with Samia. I stand with the beautiful, brave, and resilient survivors that I've spent extensive time with in Iraq. Those that saw their parents killed before them and then taken by ISIS and categorized like merchandise based on whether they thought they were beautiful or not, their age, and whether they were virgins, like merchandise. And if that was not enough, they were raped, they were tortured, many committed suicide and died, and others may have attempted, but they survived. And they're standing before us today. They're crying out and they're asking, "Where are you, world? Where are you, world?" We went to the front lines where we were 200 meters away from ISIS. We traveled to the Sinjar mountain to spend time with survivors. My mother, who is the president of the organization, just returned from the war-torn part of Syria in Homs. She returned 1 week ago and testified before the UK Parliament. she learned of something very harrowing. Parents, like many of you today, had children, but these children were in captivity. And they got a knock on their door. They opened that door and they found plastic black bags. The bags had the body parts of their daughters. The body parts of their daughters. And a video. A video of their daughters being raped and tortured. Their parents. Their parents, they're just like us. Their parents, their mothers, their fathers, these are not numbers. They are not numbers. They are just like us. But they're living in an unfortunate part of the world. I promised that I would not leave without sharing their voices before the entire world, not just to hear the stories, but to act. This is a call for action. We need to stand with our fellow brothers and our fellow sisters. A story of a beautiful mother named Rita, Christian woman from Mosul, also got a knock on her door. The ISIS foreign fighters were at the door. And they told her, you have two choices. You are to leave now or you are to pay the jizya. She said, I will pay. Give me a few seconds. My daughter's in the shower. They said, you don't have a few seconds. And they lit the house with a torch from the bathroom that the daughter was showering in. Their daughter had 4-degree burns. And Rita took her daughter, trying, scrambling, doing anything to save her, rushed her to the hospital. And her daughter died in her arms. But do you want to know the last thing that Rita's daughter said? Forgive them. Forgive them. See, in the midst of darkness, there is light. And it is that light that has us sitting here today. Because when there's light, there is hope. Last week, we were before the UK Parliament, and we testified as to the accounts of what we've seen. We also brought a 16-year-old survivor, just like Samia, who had seen her father shot and murdered in front of her own eyes, saw a 9-year-old girl get raped so many times that her body could not take it and she died before her. She saw a mother eating her baby. ISIS killed her baby, grinded the baby and fed the baby to the mother. This is what we're talking about here. And I will tell you something. Though the legal arguments were very important in that parliamentarian decision in the House of Commons, it was the stories of our fellow daughters, mothers, brothers, fathers. It is those stories that moved the House of Commons. In a unanimous vote, they stood and said, this is a genocide. Now, the question is, what does it mean? When we declare that a genocide has happened, what does it mean? I want to share with you what it meant to the 16-year-old witness that came with us and testified. A few minutes after the hearing, we called her. She said, oh God, thank you, God, you heard our cries. This is justice for our people, our honor and dignity returned. That's what that declaration meant to Ikhlas. We then called a mother in Syria who lost her child. And the mother said, our voices have finally been heard. My son's innocent blood shed has not been ignored. Please tell the world to continue our fight until we are safe. Decisions have been made. And the first step, the first victory, is that healing process, that the survivors know that we stand with them. And now, it is time for each and every one of you to take your stand. I carried their voices to you. Now carry their voices to the world. Speak to your members in Parliament. Speak at the United Nations. And let's get this referred to the Security Council. And let us see the perpetrators prosecuted in front of the International Criminal Court. We can do it. We can do it. Remember, it's not about them. It is about all of us. I congratulate you for being here and taking the first step. And I look forward to the day where we sit together and see the end of this fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you for being the voice of these victims and for bringing their voices to us here today, for bringing their voices to the international community, and for your call to action. It was a very moving way, I think, to end the testimonies of the morning, so thank you. Before I hand the microphone back over to His Excellency the Nuncio, I would like to thank all three of our panelists for their courage and their bravery. So thank you.